I've decided to do a series of videos and publish them on YouTube about the Japanese Hamanaka knitting machine. I believe this is a 1990s machine. It knits garter stitch rather famously. It also knits stocking stitch, and then you can do various combinations of purl and stocking, basket weave, quote unquote, ribbing, so on and so forth. The machine is fairly rare, but I think that there are a few of them in use now, and I do know that there are not very many good videos on these at all, and so I thought that I would produce a series in order to help. They're lovely little machines, and so it's a if you have one, then hopefully these will help. The first thing that I want to show is what it looks like on the outside. It's a hard plastic case, and what you normally see is that at least this fastening is off or broken. In this case, it's off. And the reason is, it's usually this one, they're difficult to pack, and if you don't figure it out, then you end up kind of wadding this down, and what happens is this buckle or clasp or clamp comes off. If you have the whole clasp or clamp, let me put, hang on a second, sorry about that. If you have the whole clasp or clamp, then it is easily enough put back into place. You just unscrew it, the metal plate at the back or at the front, put this along here and put it into place, okay, so that it is like that one. If you don't have one, then you're going to end up rigging it just like everybody does. The second thing that I want to discuss about the Hamanaka is what's in it, what's in the container, and how do you pack it? Because unpacking is easy. It's like most of life. Unpacking is easy. Putting it back together properly is not so easy. This is the handle. Let me back up a little bit. Okay. This is the handle. This is the carriage on the bed. These are the tools. I'll go through those in another video. And up in the top are loaded other, this is weights and casting at the same time, clamps, and the yarn mast. There is a chart showing you how to load that. The smartest thing to do is take a picture so that you know how it came to you, unless it came to you wrong, which also happens. And then here's the trick. Let me use the handle. And the handle does nothing other than just screw in there. It's not anything fancy. Okay. The trick is that the Hamanaka is not the same height on this bed as it is on this bed, because it's a little flat double bed machine. So when you put the machine in, if you put it the wrong way with the feet, see the white feet? With the feet, or the service feet, they're actually unscrewed too, then this will be too high, and you and everybody else on earth has struggled with it, and it will never ever close. You have to put these white bits towards the middle of the case. Then the handle comes off. It goes here on the end, and the tools go there. The tools. The tools come in this little case. And honestly, they are pretty routine things, except for the 3, I think, Hamanaka specific attachments. These are, well, more than 3, I guess. These are cams that adjust the stitch sizes. There are 4 sizes in most. They are referred to by color, and I have a 5th size that you can almost never find for finer gauge work, finest gauge work of what they offered. There is no capability to set the stitch size. Instead, similar to bond machines and most, you know, like that'll do. You put cams in to set your stitch size that way rather than choosing or adjusting the stitch size. The norm is white, green, red, and blue. The next thing in the toolbox, these are yarn holders and mounts of sorts. You get spare ones. It goes here, and when we push it out, you can just raise it, and so you could have them preloaded for various either yarn weight, thickness, or color situations. Sorry to keep banging. I seem more careless than I am. These are the Hamanaka weights. Hamanaka kind of light heavy weights, but it's still just a regular weight. If you have other knitting machines, you have these weights more likely than not, unless you have knit-tack style or passives. Needle pusher, a screwdriver, yay, a really crappy crochet hook, a rather nice tool, hand tool. You might have other hand tools. I do. I use everything I can put my hands on to get the knitting done. Next, these are really important. These are your garter stitch throws. I'm making up the terms, so whatever. But these go in. They look like they're upside down when they go in. You have to have, well, you don't have to have both, but you are going to be limited if you don't have both. They screw in on either side, and they, as you will see later, they move the needles from one side to the other. So if a needle is on this side, it gets moved to that side. If a needle is on this side, it gets moved to that side. You cannot do garter stitch on the machine really at all. It's harder than on most machines without these. They're like an external cam. They are an external cam. They move needles. And the needles. These are the Hamanaka needles. I have been utterly unable to source them. You got anywhere from however many people didn't lose when you bought your machine, all the way up to, I think, 52 was a normal complement. They, as you will see later, are easy to drop. They, like all knitting machine needles, they go to mysterious places when you do drop them. If you lose them, you're in a world of trouble. So when you're knitting on your Hamanaka, have something underneath the machine, ideally, and be prepared to, as soon as a needle drops, and it will at times, get on your hands and knees, crawl under the porch, do whatever you have to do in order to find that needle. As far as I know, there are not replacements. Hamanaka did provide a manual. I'm going to knit all the way through it, and this has been translated. It's under copyright, so I can't provide either Japanese nor translated versions of the manual, but the series of videos itself will work all the way through the manual. Okay, I'm seated now. Let's take a look at the carriage, and then we'll take a look at the beds. This is the carriage. As I showed before, the yarn carrier. Yeah. The yarn carrier goes in here. Like so. The row counter is here, and there's the trip for it. These are the mounts for your outboard cams for the garter stitch knitting. And that's about it for the top. It's not a tremendously complicated machine. It relies on a very sophisticated knowledge of how knitting works and how cams work. As I showed before, that's the depth of the stitch. The way that that works is however far back a needle goes is how much yarn it pulls into the stitch. So the farther back the needle goes, the bigger the stitch. This is the biggest of the cams. I'm going to use a DK weight for these videos. It will go all the way down to close to lace. I mean, if you wanted lacy stuff, then it would go all the way down to lace, okay? Without the outboard cams on, that's it. There's a very simple needle path. And so it's just, all it's doing is making the needles knit. The trick is that it's making the needles knit on two beds. And so let's look at that next. The Hamanaka is a double bed machine. There are machines like this, other machines like this. The Penguin in France, or from France, and normally in France, is like this. The Prior Pearl from New Zealand is like this. The Hamanaka, I'm not quite sure. I don't think the Urka is from Germany, but this was a bit of a thing that people wanted to be able to do. Manufacturers wanted to be able to make, and so they did this flat machine that allows double hooked needles to slide back and forth. On the back of the machine, you have the ability to take, well, let me show that in a minute. You can take the beds apart. I'm sure you can see, yes. I can see, but can you? And they can come totally apart. We'll look at that more when we have the machine mounted. And you can also take the front rail off. And that's with these smaller knobs. And this is what I mean by the front rail. If you get stuck, if you get well and truly hung up, which can happen, then you can take this rail off, or at least loosen it, and get the carriage out. It will create havoc with your knitting. There are things that this setup is vulnerable to, and one of them is needles going all over the place and the knitting absolutely exploding. You have to just get good at your game, and as with anything, the better you are, the less explosions you have. I'm getting ready to set the machine up on the table, and so we've already gotten the beds, we've already got the carriage out, we already have the tools out, and now I want to take this top bed out. That lowers, that is a spring clip, and your weight combined with casting on comb are here. You need to have, and you're likely to have, very rotted elastic thread in there. So get yourself a great big cone or spool of elastic thread, because you're going to need it in your Hamanaka life. There is also a yarn mast. We'll be putting that on in just a sec. This is a bar that is used when the knitting gets long. So as we work our way through this sampler, we'll get to where we're using that. This is the topper. And these are the springs. No, they are not the springs. These are the clamps. We're going to use those next. I'm getting ready to clamp the machine to this table. And as with all double beds, only the back bed attaches to the table. The knitting machine in its totality hangs over the edge of the table. The knitting goes in between the two beds. So the side that's going to attach to the table has these clamp openings, holes. Before you do this, it's not crucial, but seems to be easier to me. Take your yarn mast and put it in. And it goes in this slot back here, and push that together and mount it. Then you gotta kind of do the holding a knitting machine thing while you're also turning a clamp. So get your clamp to roughly the right size. You probably will have to adjust this every time if you pack the machine back up. In an ideal world, I would leave machines out. In an ideal world, I wouldn't have several hundred machines. Or I'd have a great big huge Taj Mahal of knitting machines. So the reason that you will probably have to readjust this each time is that in order to put it back into the case, the screws have to be up farther in the clamps. The clamps aren't special. You can use knitting machine clamps. I would get, you know, as much length on there on the top that's going into the machine as possible, but these are normal knitting machine clamps. I'm not even sure they're the ones that came with the Hamanaka. So I'm at, and here's where you really wish that you were born with just one more arm. There's a scoop on the edge. Can you see that? Let me make sure. Yeah. On the edge of where you're going to put the clamp in, bring that edge off the side of the table. In other words, it doesn't sit up on that edge. The edge hangs right at the edge of the table. And I think this is pointed out in the manual. And I will find that page as this video concludes. So there, what I'm trying to, there, it just eased down off the table so that I'm not up on that raised edge when I'm clamping this down, which would make it unstable. Whenever you clamp a knitting machine, make yourself secure. Get a screwdriver, use it as a T-handle inside the circle of the clamp and tighten things. See what happened? I was tightening because I thought I was in place and it came off. You need to know, I've had a huge knitting machine come off in my lap before. Fortunately, I caught it. You really don't want to go through that. So I'll tighten this in a minute. You don't have to watch me tighten, but I will have this totally tightened, not just, I think that's good enough. We really don't ever want to seek for good enough in this sort of thing. So here, I think I remember that the machine, yes, this is what I wanted to show, is that here in the manual is showing there's that little lip. Make sure the lip on the underside of the bed is over, just over the edge of the table. We want to put the topper onto the yarn mast. This is an awful topper, and it has very serious tension adjustment problems, so we will address that when we get to it. But just when you're suffering, sometimes misery loves company, and be aware that it is an absolutely terrifically horrible topper. We could rig one from a machine that has a better topper and use it behind the machine. I just want to work with what we have, and that wasn't the best part of the Hamanaka. Now we need to put the carriage in. It rides in these rails, runs in these rails, like so. You can see that this serves as a trip for the row counter. You can reset the rows. My general working with this machine is It's a sturdy little machine. It's not a toy, but my general MO with this machine is to work with it fairly delicately, just because that feels right. This isn't a clatter and bang machine, just in my assessment. So I try to be careful. Why did I think of that? Because I try to be careful when I move these things, the little levers for this. I don't just whirl them around and get going again. I would rather have this keep working. They're hard to get. I want to thread the machine now. I'm using DK. This will knit a full range of yarns, maybe even a US worsted, which would be a UK Aran, down definitely to the lighter fingerings, but DK's good. So let's thread the tension assembly, upper tension assembly. I'm gonna do center pull, and yarn goes through here. I'm just gonna go under, then over, then under, then through, okay? The center pull might or might not work well. I had a few techniques worked out for this, and as we encounter tension problems, which we will with this horrible tension mast, we'll work through them. But I'm gonna go on and put things into place. Let me hold up on that for a second. So here, and then, I don't know if you can see. Let me see what you can see. Not well, I'll get over here. I'm gonna take out the yarn feed, and a couple of things. This is one of my favorite tools on earth. I think it's used for hair extensions and for beading. It's like a double-eyed needle, but it's not really double-eyed because it has a handle. So there's that. And suddenly, hey presto, and we are on. If I wanted to do multiple colors, two being multiple with the Hamanaka, as far as be set up on the mast, because there's room over here, then I could leave one hanging and reach into my tool bag, get another, and set it up and just move back and forth, and they'd each be threaded. It's not a lot of trouble, and you can leave it in place to thread it, but I'm trying to be thorough here. The second thing I want to do has nothing to do with the Hamanaka. It has everything to do with machine knitting. Is I'm going to put a bell on my yarn. I do this as a matter of course because you can get excited and forget to watch your yarn because you're watching so many other things, and this will ring before I knit off the machine. I don't knit off very often anymore, but I have, and I don't want to. So that's my little trick, okay? At this point, we are threaded, and we are ready to put the needles in, and then we'll cast on. It's time to put the needles into place. As I mentioned before, the needles, as far as I know, are not replaceable. And so be careful. I've got a towel down. I've crawled around under porches before with a magnet to get needles. They're really not replaceable, and it's not very fun to knit without a full complement of them. So we're not gonna knit with 50 today because I want to have room to do techniques and still have the carriage in view. It's really not any harder to knit with 50 than it is to knit with, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So it's 10 to there. You see the little marks, okay? So that'll be another 10. So let's knit with 40. And these are double-ended, double-latched needles. If you have some that don't have latches, it's not a mistake, and it's not just for picking up or something like that. It is for a special technique that we'll get to, and I'm actually going to perform an experiment as well to see if I can compensate for the people that with. Okay, so they used to sell some needles, and they came. I don't have one with me in an adorable little needle envelope, and they didn't have any latches on. Didn't have a latch on one side. And you think, oh, well, this is a mistake, or this is for picking up or something. No, it was for a special technique that's a tuck technique that could be done. And I want to do some experiments, but that's for when we get to that section of the manual. Right now, we're going to cast on. So you put all your needles in place. I'm getting all of the latches open as I go. The problem is that the needles are free in the bed. Nothing, there's no bar, no needle retaining bar, there's no sponge bar keeping them boingy and in place. Nothing is holding these in place except for gravity, in this case, and the stitches. Once we get stitches on, it can be, and it will be, you will have moments where the needles go everywhere, and just start over until you get to where you've kind of got the touch for this. Just start over and regard it as learning or suffering. Okay. And you notice I have the carriage just out of my way. I have the needles out right now. I actually really like fancy little bowls and stuff around, and I normally have real pretty ones around. That's one of the things that I've done is mid-century modern ashtrays, turn of the century, a century ago, pickle serving, you know, the cut glass and the molded glass containers, just you name it. Garlic graters. There's a little Delft looking piece that somebody sent me that had a rough surface on it for the garlic. Well, I eat garlic in bigger chunks than that, but it made a lovely little tray. However, right now I don't have one of my pretty things around, so I'm just working off of the table. That one sounded a little bit oddly, and I was just feeling what was going on. Now, I am going to immediately, at once, no hesitations. I don't know why that's there. I must have tied it to keep it safe somewhere. I'm not going to even worry about it. All of the extra needles that I have not used are going into the bag. I'm checking to make sure there aren't. You see, there's one lurking, wanting to get lost. Sealed and put away. You do need to be neurotic about your needles. So embrace neurosis. I'm going to line this up for now, and then we will be ready for casting on. The needles are now in a neutral position, which means that they're right in the center, and you can see the center because there are marks on the beds. This front bar here is also a position for the needles. What we're going to do now is we are going to thread the carriage. I'm just dropping the yarn down. Dropping the yarn down. There's a flat back to this carrier. Put the flat back against the carriage. Come down. They want the tail to be in between the beds. And there's a bar here, as you will learn soon enough when you do your own, that keeps you from doing that easily. You can use a bodkin. There are many ways to solve getting yarn where you want it to be, but I just put a little weight down there and I will hand tension as I go in. What I also want to do is I want to move the needles into front position, which is, remember I told you that bar also serves as a position, and this is the case with the prior pearls as well. If we ever get really excited about doing it the hard way, we'll get the prior pearls out. And I'm not going to engage the upper tension spring yet, because I just want this to start knitting. So across I come. I'm holding tension. And I have stitches, I promise, on every one of the needles. At that point, or this point, or whatever point we're at, what I want to do is I want to get, and I don't have my bodkin handy. There's a bodkin when you need one. So let's use one of these precious needles. You really don't want to go banging around in there too much because you've got weights and all sorts of things. And meanwhile, the needles are free, so let's use this threader, find the middle there, and bring the end down. There is on the underside of the weight a little clip. I don't feel that it's utterly necessary. I'm just going to put some weight with like a clover clip down there. Okay. I'm keeping track of my precious needles. As a matter of fact, we're not going to even keep one out. I had two out, and they're both going to go back into the baggie. So we now have a row of stitches, and we're going to knit. Oops. We're going to put the upper tension on, and then we're going to knit. I have found that if you give it, and the same thing with the prior pearls, I don't know about the other few of these machines, but if you give it a little bit of like ballast weight here with your hand rather than just running it with the handle, that you usually get better stitches. And we'll do 30 stitches, that's 15, 16, here because I like starting on this side, and that will do. And that number is 30. Actually, I think I need 5 more, but I'm not gonna worry about it. I already had some stitches on the counter that weren't actual live. I had some rows on the counter, but there we're beginning to knit. Oops. So let's change to another stitch. The stockinette that we knitted casting on, I am looking at the stocking stitch side, which could be really handy in some knitting situations, but let's knit in the other direction. So what we do is we move our needles, and remember that bar that it's actually raised is a position. We're going to there, and we're going to knit 30 rows. You can always fast forward if you don't want to watch me knit. And now it's still stockinette, but we have reversed which side we're looking at. That's stitch side, and that's the purl side. I now want to go into ribbing, which, if you think about it, knowing that we can move these needles back and forth, you will think, well, okay, you really could knit stockinette with one, and then purl with the other, then stocking stitch and then purl. So that's what we're going to do. And what it means is that we take our needle pusher and push every other one to where it's in position there. Okay? And then knit. Now, do you see how these are wanting to float? This is a heck of a weight, and sometimes if you get stuck with the knitter, it's because it's bumping up against the hook. And what you do is you loosen the weight and hope that you can move your way across. I'm reminded of that because I actually had it happen and reset. I just had to remember what to do. I haven't knitted on one of these for a few months. And for that reason, I'm slowing down because nothing is holding these needles in place except not even really gravity. It's the stitches that are holding, and they're not fully in balance. They're kind of floating a little bit. So, it's, you know, if you're one of the people that needs to knit fast all the time, I'm not sure what to say. You can't knit fast all the time. And then here, let's see, let me pull this up. As you can see, we have ribbing. Okay, I took a break. I had some other stuff to do and then came back. And of course you wouldn't know that because these are videos. However, I wanted to say that I switched off of went ahead and re-knitted it because I wasn't liking the looseness of this, and it's going to somebody as a sampler. And so I, excuse me, took the blue cams out of the bottom and I put the white ones, the next size in, and we're getting a really, really good stitch size. So now for the DK. So, you know, sky's the limit on the blue ones. Now what I want to do, I did 1-in-1 ribbing. Let's do 2-in-2 ribbing. And they show a way to do this with their needle pushers. I've been standing here trying to work my way through it, and I can't do it. So I'm just going to do this. 2 there, 2 there. What they wanted me to do was combine the, what did they want me to do? 3 on one side of pusher B. So you get these pushers and you're supposed to lay one over the top of the other somehow, but I can't get a pattern that doesn't leave a tooth sticking out. And it was a cool idea, but it doesn't work for me right now. Okay, so now we're doing the same thing where they're alternating on the beds, but 2 are on one side with their heads at this rail, and the next 2 on the other side with their heads at the opposite rail. Okay? And let's do 30. that's our 30. Now let's take a look. And I think that you will agree with me that the cloth is better. That's my towel on the floor to catch any needles that fall. So there's stocking stitch one way, stocking stitch the other way, 1 and 1 ribbing, and 2 and 2 ribbing. Obviously, you could do any combination here with the ribbing. You would just want to have a number of needles that divided. So if you were doing 3 and 1, knit 3, purl 1, then it would be, that's 4, and it needs to divide out by 4 evenly. So make sure that that works, okay? Now, the next thing we're going to need to do, we'll go into some other stitch patterns, but we also are about to hit the floor. So let's find out what we do about that. Okay, since the cast on comb is also a weight, it's important for the knitting, and crucially, the stitches with this cast on that we used, these are not finished edge stitches, they're live, and so they can come off. So if you, there's a couple little tricks here. So I'm gonna turn this, okay, and these are hooks. That's a goat. If it comes over those hooks, the stitches, these stitches come over those hooks, you've messed up, okay? Because they're live and they're coming undone. So pull on the other side to get them in place here. Okay, they're still just fine on the elastic. Then you take that, it looks like a knitting needle, but it doesn't have a needle part. Just has the ends, and you come through the handle on the bottom and put it through like so. Okay. Then they swear, this makes me edgy because I don't want my cloth, and I'm looking at here are the pictures from the manual, and what I have always done when I got to this point is I put something in there. Almost anything will do, like a sheet of paper if I had a sheet of paper. So let me get a sheet of paper. Sorry, you have to listen to me struggle with paper, but the knitting's more important than having a cleanly edited video. The videos make me edgy when they're so clean that I think it just kind of moves through all the things that can happen, and probably did happen. So you don't get clean with me. I do these live. Okay, so I've got a piece of paper and I am folding it over my comb. And then I'm gonna roll this a few times, and actually I'm gonna take that faux knitting needle out, okay? Keep this rolling, 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 until I get there. I have this again. And obviously anything would do for this. You push, and it stabs you. There. And look, I now am weighted, and let's take a look. So that's the kind of contraption that you're building with that. We're now going to do a stitch. We're still working without making garter stitch, you notice, but I'm going to do a stitch that is a brioche stitch, and let's make sure we've got everything we want. Okay, so we're going to go step by step from the manual. Remove 2 gauge adjustment cams as shown in the photo, but go to a larger cam. Now we're only one lower than the largest. They want you to go 2 up, but we can't go 2 up. So let's do this. Hang on. I wanted to make sure that I understood. So the next larger, I switched to the red because I just wasn't pleased with the stitch quality on this, and knitted it very quickly. Now I switched to the white. So we're going to do 2 things. The blue is the next biggest, and it's next bigger probably because there's only one. And we're going to do this. We're going to switch the whites to the blues and take off others. Okay, so let's get the yarn out of the way. All right, now here we go. We knew we were going to end up here, didn't we? We're going to take, we are going to get Philip's head. I'm going to do a brioche stitch, so we're going to pip it up here. So that one comes out, and let's look at them. So it's got a mounting post that goes into that hole so that you know that it's in the right place. And we tighten this one. We take this one off. I'm going to go and loosen all of them, okay? Because they all have to come out. What's the goal is that these 2 will be empty and these 2 will have a larger cam in it. So those are out. I'm going to tighten this one because it doesn't get a cam at all. What's going to happen is it won't stitch because the needle won't be pulled back around the cam. It won't stitch, and so they're opposite each other this way, so that one stitch is going that way and the other stitch is going that way, and that makes a rib brioche. Okay, now we want to, or broche. Okay. Now, when I'm done with this video, I will switch back to all white cams. All right. However, so we're back. We take this, put it back in place, push that out and push it down. And let's make sure. So it says when you move the carriage from right to left, only the needles in the front will knit, but the needles in the back cannot knit, and the yarn passes over. Then when you come back, the opposite happens. So let's see what happens in 30 rows, shall we? I'm going to go on a 0 this. I have been letting it rolling up, but I'm tired of keeping track in my head about multiples of 30. Okay, look. Wait a minute. It did say one thing. Hang on just a minute. We want a 1-to-1 ribbing pattern, the rightmost needle must be on the back and the left must be on the right. So that one row's no good, but we're going to think that we will get through it. So rightmost, that's this way on the back. I just want to get some of them to where I'm kind of sane here. And the leftmost is in the front. And that, because of me missing that step, it didn't do it. So what am I gonna do? I'm gonna wrap it. And so to wrap, I'm gonna raise this needle. I'm making this up. I'm gonna go there. Go like so. I just want to catch the stitch. Okay, let's try again. So we've got one wonky row, we don't care. Let me get a couple of rows, okay? Right, must turn them over. Okay. I think their instructions here may not be entirely good because that stitch has dropped. So I think they meant back and front. So we're going to take out, in other words, it's because of which cam is knitting, okay? So we're going to take these two out. We're going to put them here really carefully because they matter more than the knitting. And I think for this configuration, what they meant was that the rightmost needs to be on the front and the leftmost needs to be on the back. And so let me do that for a minute. Okay, then let me get you here where you can see the stitch. So Melissa's going to be here. So you can see that one is passing over and not knitting, and then that's reversing. So let's look at one. Let's look at, can you see it? What can I do to give you something to see? Try this back up a little bit. So watch where the shadow, well, you can't. I'm done with the carrot, just gonna get in the way. So you're just gonna have to keep track. That one, okay, that's to the right, and that's to the left of these double red. And see how that's passed over, but that's knitted? Now, that one's passed over and that's knitted. So let's get that out. A 30, and let's see what we have. So there's our first wonky row, and then there's our stitch pattern. We're to the garter stitch and variations. There is a tuck stitch other than the brioche that I'll have to show tomorrow because I don't have the needles necessary for that. But otherwise, this will be all the stitches that the manual shows, and I'm adding one, which is a basket weave. And then tomorrow, I'll be on a different machine, but I should be able to finish the series on stitches and hopefully do the series on hand manipulations, because transferring stitches with the double hooked needles is its own special kind of fun. So what I want to do right now is I want to get into one row of stockinette to get out of this brioche. And so I'm going to move all of them forward. I could move all of them back, okay? And this just puts me in my stockinette position. Let's move them the other way. I think there is a difference, and I haven't worked it out in my head. But let's go on to the back bed, because that follows the convention of back bed and river, which this is not at all a back bed and river, but I kind of think that that's the first bed is at play here. So let's stitch over. Okay. Let me make sure there's nothing I'm going to forget. All right. Now here comes the magic. If your jam is garter stitch, you need these outboard cams, and they go in looking kind of upside downy to me. Okay, so this one goes, gotta get way up here. This one goes in here. It screws into place, and then the other one does the same thing. Let's look at those. From here. See it? What it's going to do is just shovel the needles across the two beds. And so I'm going to put the other one in. Again, to me, looking like it needed to be the other way. Like maybe that needs to be up, but no, that needs to be down, because that's the action part. And we need the action part at the needles, not at ourselves. So back onto the bed we go. Okay. Now, what I want you to watch carefully, let's zoom up. All of the needles are closer to the back. Let's think about what garter stitch is. Let's think about what Nubian goats are. Garter stitch is where one row is knitted, then another row is purled. When you're hand knitting, you just turn it over and you just keep knitting. It's the easiest stitch possible, hand knitting, but it's the most difficult on machines because you have to move something. You have to move the stitches, or you have to move the bed, or you have to turn the universe around. Something has to move in order to make the stocking stitch. And the garter stitch is very difficult because each one of our stitches, being machine knitters, is on a separate needle. This is, the Hamanaka is not the inventor of this. It's not their origination of the technique. Like I said, the prior pearls work exactly the same way, and they're, oh gosh, half a century earlier almost. But what they're going to do is, what has to move? Well, remember how we could move stockinette from the back bed or knit it on the front bed? Okay, we did that first. We knitted on one side, and then we pushed all the needles over and knitted on the other. How about if that happened every row? We would have garter, and that's what's going to happen. So watch these; they're all back there. Let's go well, and got to get to where I'm a little bit advanced now. Got excited. The first row is always the hardest with any knitting machine, just because you got to get your alignment, latches open, all of that. Okay. This is a dummy. It's sorry. I need to have, okay, so there is a method to this. I'm going to show you what it is. It's real easy. It's physical. See that? Like the tunnel of love at the local fair? In order to go into the tunnel of love for garter stitch, the hooks have to be on this side. So now we're watching. They're all towards me. Let's get over here so we don't bump. So the closest to me. And they've all moved to the other side. That's one. So let's call that one. And now, oh, they're back towards me. See them moving back and forth? It's stitching on the front bed and flipping over and stitching on the back bed. And vice versa. So it's, let me get here. Remember, I'm going that way. When I'm going this way, that outboard cam is just going over the needles. It's not doing anything. It's this one that's then gonna push up, and you can see it. See the needles coming? Let's go slowly. See them going over to the other side? So it's the trailing cam that the stitch gets made on this side. Oops, you can't see this is. The stitch gets made on this side here, and then this throws the needles over this way. Then when I come back, the stitch gets made here, and the far one throws the needles back the other way. I'm going to stop at 29 because, not that you care, presumably you weren't counting, but I like to start on the right hand side. And here we have stockinette with lint. And let's see, is it truly stockinette? Yes, it really truly is. And we'll look at it tomorrow morning too. So let's, now that we've learned about throwing the needles around on the bed, let's do something else. I'm going to add a stitch, and then tomorrow we'll do the little tuck because it's pretty cool, but I don't have the needles, and I want to experiment with something first because I might be able to show everybody that has one of these how you can do it if you don't have those special needles. We've done garter. We're going to get out of garter, but we're going to do a basket weave, and so we're going to get this. This is pretty much garter, okay? When you put these outboard guys on and start looking like a pontoon boat, you're meaning to knit garter. And it seems to me, my head keeps wanting to come up with other variations using like maybe one of the outboard ones where, you know, it knits one way and doesn't get thrown, and then knits the other way and does get thrown, but you have to keep switching them back and forth. So let's not go there right now. Okay. What I want to do is I want to do a basket weave, and it's going to have stockinette and purl in it, but it's going to alternate. But what I need to check is something that I need to check with every single patterned bit of knitting that I ever do, and so do you need to check this. You need to check the factors. Does it divide evenly? So I want to do 4 and 4 because I like 4 and 4. This is conveniently 4 needles. Okay, that works out. And it works out in two ways. It works out that four divides in evenly into the 40 needles that I put on here. So if I put 50 needles in there, would it go in? No. It also works because the ones on the left are on the front bed and the ones on the right are on the back bed. There's some niceties about putting an extra row for your joins, but if you were seaming, in theory, this would work because you would be going from all knit to all purl or vice versa when you join them. So this probably could have been a variation when I was just moving back and forth the stockinette, like stockinette here, stockinette there, then stockinette everywhere. So sorry about that, but it's cool. Okay, so we have to do two. We've done that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, that's just going to be 4 and 4 ribbing until we put these there and these there. Get over there. This is not in the book. When I was first learning these, it was so obvious that you could do this and so beautiful that I just did it and looked for it in the book and it wasn't there. So let's knit a little bit, okay? I might should knit 5 or knit 3. I would need to look the stitches a little bit taller than it is wide. You know, we don't have square stitches. However, we're going to do 4s. We are simple people. And 4s work. Now, I was lucky on that last pass because I didn't tension my yarn going in. It is feeding time on the farm. They can hear me through the door, and that means that I get to be nagged. Okay, like I said, I was lucky. I need to, when I'm going in, I need to tension this a little bit myself. I bet. Well, I don't know if I can see that better or not. I kind of think I can. So you'd want to do the first one so that you remember which side, okay? But so do your first one and then push all the others the other way. Tension. And then you realize that you can just do that because you know that your first 4 are on the side that you want them to be on. And you can count to 4. Tension going in. And this one we're going to do 32. There's no connection to my having done it 29 the other time. It's just I want to finish my pattern of 30. Doesn't work for my 4s. Okay. Tension. And let's see what we have. See why I wanted to do it? Let's raise it up a little bit. Look at that. absolutely gorgeous. Hi, let's do that last stitch that's in the manual, which is a tuck stitch within garter. And then I'm going to do a little bit of work, research on my own, and then I'm going to do the second series of videos, which is about techniques on this machine. Decreases, increases, the normal sorts of things, but with a different sort of bed and a different sort of needle, which makes some of the techniques a little tricky. So we'll see if we can get through this. I'm on a different machine, and I've had a little bit of fun with it wanting to hang up. And so if it hangs up and I can get through it, I'll show you what I do to just keep knitting while I am thinking and diagnosing and trying to get through a video. As a separate little thing, Hamanaka sold needles in this cute little envelope. And they were needles that have a latch on one end, but do not have a latch on the other. And this is used for the tuck. Obviously, we could do that ourselves with the needles that we have if we wanted to do it, but we don't have extra needles and we don't have a source of needles. And so one of the things I am going to experiment with is whether the one end of a regular needle could be rubber banded or taped. Rubber band might be nice, like the little bitty dental ones, rubber banded down to do what I'm going to show you now. Or maybe there's another way to do a tuck. I'm not sure. What you do is you put these in, and when it's on the side, and it's in garter stitch, when it's on the side that does not have the latch, it can't knit, so it just stays in the hook. And then when it comes back, it knits. And so what it makes is a line of stockinette in the ribbing, and that looks a little ho-hum. It's actually fairly attractive. So let's do it. I have 5 of these needles, and so we're going to put in 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so here's a technique. You have your, I'm going to move from one needle to another. Your stitch is on the back side of the latch, so that when I pull forward, the latch closes, and you notice I've got them hooked together, and then I tip the stitch onto the new needle, like so. Let's do that over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So again, I make sure that I'm on the back side of the latch so that it can close. You need to be friends with your latches. The better you are with your latches, using them to move you through the loops rather than hand tools even. If a latch can do it, do it with a latch. You'll be a better knitter. It also will help you get out of situations. I was videoed one time for public radio, which still strikes me as odd. I'm going to go in 1, not 5, but 4 on this side. And I had foolishly worn a lace crochet, kind of like a cardigan, but it's not really a cardigan. And while I was talking on video, which was not going to have any editing, 1, 2, 3, 4, I knitted myself into the machine. And so I kept talking because I can talk. And meanwhile, I was taking the needles where my sweater was knitted in and raising them up and closing those latches and getting out of the machine. I was using circular machines, so it's a useful skill. Make it a life skill to use the latches whenever you can. All right, let's see if we can get through this. I had to rewind it because so it's not machine wound, but it's Melissa wound, but it's feeding loosely, which normally is good, but actually I prefer a cake and a centrifuge for these, which I'm not on. It helps with tension problems. And so I'm making sure that when I get into the knitting that I have some tension on the stitches. And then once that's caught, I'm tightening there. That's a pretty tedious little process. Now, something that I have done before is I have wrapped one time around one of these feeds, but I really honestly think it's a little bit too much tension. It can help sometimes. Okay, now, see how that's hanging? I think I've got some manky needles. What I'm doing is I'm going to raise this up so that there's less weight, and I cleared. And I'm going to loosen this. I need as little tension as possible in all things. And so I'm knitting really pretty slowly because I would prefer to there. I'm just raising up a little bit and it's clearing. What I'll do later is I'll get needles. I'll probably start here because what do? You can't mark them, you can't see, and I'll substitute out one at a time. And I'll know, and be methodical, and eventually you'll find which needle it is. If it's not the needle, it's the carriage. But you have to work by process of elimination. Especially if you can't see. It's right there towards the end. But who knows which one? I did the same thing. I put my hand under. I think what's happened is humidity. This has been sitting out. I thought I was going to work on it more several months ago. And it was sitting out, and I think humidity and dust settling. We live in an old house. And I think I've gotten into the needle latches. And I just need to do that kind of cleaning. However, I wanted to make this video, so we are going to soldier on and hope we can make more. I don't actually like to fix machines. People think that I do because I do so much of it, but I don't. What I like is I like machines to work. I like to use machines, which is entirely different. But I have to fix them sometimes in order to do it. Fixing them doesn't even have a strong background in mechanics, but fixing them is just not. To me, it's a wicked necessity because I work with machines all the time. And actually there, I think that I fouled up my stitch because I was so determined to get this thing knitting. I think that I was, so see, here's what it's doing. And I actually was making stitches that I shouldn't have made, so we'll have a messed up spot. I forgot what I was doing when I was trying to fix or get this to knit. You see here, there are two on there. Let's see if you can see that. There we go. So let me find where I am. There are two on there. Then when it comes back, it'll knit those two together. And that's a tuck stitch. It's a one stitch tuck. Sometimes you can do multiple. And I actually did something kind of interesting that I'll show you if I can get through this, where using the same needles, I made a multiple stitch tuck, but it was very manual. We may wait on that. I may need to just be grateful when I get through this. Okay. this is not how you want to be knitting. It's tense and it's not good mechanics. And let's stop because I think I've worn my luck out on here. However, we've got enough to where I can get down here and we can look at the cloth. Okay, so you see it? See the tucks? And it's a heavy weight. As you can see, it produces an interesting effect. So there you go. Garter stitch tuck. It's the last of the stitches in the book, and I'll get down to just a few needles on this and we'll do transfers and decreases and increases and that sort of thing.